Hey everyone, it's Matt Collins here from Platypus Digital, and I'm bringing you today's Control R webinar on email marketing. Today we're going to go through the fundamentals of email marketing for charities, how you can use your email list to activate donors, to get campaigners, to get even new service users, and I'm going to tell you why your email list is one of the most undervalued resources that your charity has at its disposal, and how you could be getting even more from the people on your email list, arguably, than from your social media accounts. So I'm going to dive in. We're going to talk about all the fundamentals of email marketing. We're going to do a few examples of some great charity emails that are out there. And I'm going to give you some links to some further reading and some extra resources. So let's dive right in. So what we're going to cover today: why email marketing, a few charity examples, how to get your emails read, the elements of a great email, personalization and how a big an impact it can have on open rates and click rates, as well as automation, also known as drip campaigns, where you send a series of emails that are triggered by automatic events. So we're going to talk about each of those things today. So why email marketing? Well, email fundraising revenue grew by 15% last year, and it represents 26% of all online revenue. You can see this graph here. This bar chart is from all industries, and it's rating the highest return on investment digital channels that there are. So all companies from all sorts of industries asked which channels give them the highest return on investment. And you'll see the email marketing is at the top there. Every year it's either top or number 2. So actually it's probably one of the biggest resources that you have. The DMA reported that email marketing generated £38 for every £1 spent back in 2015. So that's obviously a really high return on investment. And as you can see, it's rated as the top digital channel for ROI. And interesting that while it's one of the top channels for ROI, it's probably not one of the channels that gets the biggest amount of that's the investment in the charity sector. There's a lot of investment in social media campaigns and other types of digital channels, but probably not as much investment in email marketing as there could be. So email is still growing. There's 2.9 billion worldwide active email users, or there will be by 2019. It's been around for much longer than social media has, of course, and it's still growing. Charity open rates, so that's the percentage of people who open the average email, that's sort of hovering at around 24%. Click-through rates, that's the percentage of people who open emails who actually click a link in them, that's at around 3%. Probably everyone has an email account, so if you compare it just directly to social media, where people are saying, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Facebook, everyone does have an email address because it's just needed for so many facets of everyday life. And crucially, it's an action-oriented channel. So whenever you get an email, if you think about this even in your kind of work lives or in personal lives, we're very used to having a call to action in that email, for that email to ask us to do something. It's very kind of native behavior to get kind of an instruction or something to do in that email. So whenever you send out sort of instructions and calls to action on your emails, it's actually quite native behavior for the recipient to want to do that action, because that's just how you interact on that channel. A bit less so on social media, where people are more used to sort of getting updates and consuming content there. So it's a much more action-oriented channel than some others. The average reach of an email is much higher than it is on social media. So if you think of the average open rate of an email sent in the charity sector at about 24%, compare that to the average reach of a Facebook post, that's probably at around sort of 5%, depending on your channel and how active it is. But the average reach for email is, compared to the people that actually see them, receive the message on that channel, much higher than you'll see on social media channels. You can use email for an awful lot of things. Obviously, email newsletters is probably the most common thing that people do on their email service provider. You can also do welcomes, stroke onboarding journeys. So when someone is new to your charity, then they can get an automated journey that welcomes them to the charity, tells them the essential things that they should know about the cause. It's great for stewardship. So if someone signed up to one of your challenge events, you can take them through the process of fundraising, for training for an event, something like that. It's really good for recruiting people, particularly on the retention side, but also on the acquisition side. So if you've got a list of 10,000, 20,000 people, there's bound to be some people on there who are up for doing some fundraising for you. So it's really great to ask them. It's great for moving supporters up that ladder of loyalty. So if someone's just come in a kind of relatively light touch action, then it's great for moving them up to becoming more committed supporters. It's really great for reactivating supporters. So if people have kind of gone cold on you, or you haven't heard from them in a little while, email is a really great way of getting them back on board and getting them back involved in the organization. And it can also support your direct mail efforts. So if you're in a charity that's big enough to have kind of a direct mail function, then if you're sending out direct mail packs, you can also supplement those sendings with email by sending the people who receive the DM packs follow-up emails, just to increase engagement and to increase conversion rates. So let's think about what happens when someone subscribes to your email list. They're not just filling in a little box, they're actually raising their hand. They're not just saying, I'm going to put my email in here. I'm not just saying that they want to hear more from you as a charity. They're saying they want to do more as well. So if you think about it, someone who puts their email address in your subscribe box, they're passing their personal contact details over the internet to a stranger. That's a really high level of trust that the supporter is putting in your organization. So it's a really big opportunity for them to be involved in the cause and for them to make a really big difference to what you're trying to do. So what many organizations do for their email marketing is to round up as much information as possible, pack it into a 10 to 15 story newsletter, and then just send it out and kind of hope for the best. That's also known as spray and pray. And this doesn't always work as well as it could do. So why doesn't it work? Well, it's focusing on what you want to say, not what your supporters want to hear from you. It's using the scattergun approach. It's just kind of based on the philosophy, if we push enough content, then surely something's going to stick at some point. And that's not a very focused way of delivering marketing. And crucially, there's no single call to action. There's too much choice, and therefore you don't get nearly as much action. There's an old kind of psychological experiment whereby people were asked to try some samples of jam at a jam station in like a sort of department store or something. And they found that when they were faced with just 3 samples of jam, they were much more likely to go on to buy a pot of jam than if they had 20 samples. So if you give people less choice, then they're far more likely to go on to take the action that you want them to take. Really important to know your audience, to have a think about who's on the list, where did they come from. Obviously, this is really important in relation to GDPR in the UK. Knowing where they actually came from and knowing that you got consent to send email to them in the first place is really important. What do they want to know? Are the people on the list just there because, just because, or do they actually want to hear about what your organization has in terms of services, in terms of chances to get more involved? What have you got to offer them? As well as trying to get them to do things like fundraise and donate, have you got information that you should be sharing with them that they'll be interested in? Have you got reports? Have you got online services that they might not even know exists? And how will you, get more of them? How are you going to increase that list? Have you got an acquisition plan whereby, you have a sign-up box on the website that's really prominent? Have you got sign-up lists at your events? The classic kind of clipboard and paper, just asking people to put in their email address to hear more from you. So it's worth knowing how you're going to get more of them, but definitely best to improve what you've got to offer to the people that are already on the list first. So I'm going to take you through a few examples of charity emails to give you an idea of what some of the best organizations are sending out to their supporters. So here's an example of a kind of classic newsletter that a charity might send out. Now, not to diss email newsletters, of course, while a lot of them have way too many pieces of content and stories in there to pay attention to. There's obviously some really great ones out there, and they definitely have a place. This one's from Stroke Association. The great thing about this one is that, as well as the kind of list of stories at the bottom, it also has one big main story with a really arresting kind of sort of hero image and a nice call to action button, so you know exactly what the email wants you to do. They want you to watch Karen's video. So it's nicely designed, it's got nice short text, and it doesn't take too long to get to the point. You can also use email to get people to sign petitions. This is a really strong use of email marketing if you are the kind of charity that actually has petitions to sign and does campaigning. You can see this one from Save the Children is super short. It's really clear what what the sender of the email actually wants you to do. They want you to sign that petition. They've got nice short paragraphs so that it doesn't take too long to read the email. And we'll come on to why that's important a little bit later on. And you can see that the call to action is in two different places. You've got a nice big call to action button at the bottom, but you've also got it hyperlinked into the text to sign our petition in the bit before. So there's a reason to take the call to action and multiple opportunities to actually do the call to action as well. Fundraising through storytelling is a really great use of email marketing. Your charity probably has a whole load of case studies out there. It might have some on the website. It might have some just sitting in a shared folder somewhere on your hard drive. And they're probably much more emotive and kind of impactful than you maybe give them credit for. So sending those out on your email list is actually a really strong use of email marketing because it moves the people who get them and it makes them want to take action as well. So this is one from the British Heart Foundation, and it's all about a hidden heart defect that tragically killed Jane's daughter Emma at a very young age. So it's a really moving story, and the email doesn't want anything more from you at this stage than just to watch the story and to find out more about it. So this can be a really great way of making sure that your email subscribers are emotionally engaged with your cause. And the more emotionally engaged your email subscribers are, then the more likely they are to donate or to campaign or to take action for you later on. So dig up those old case studies. They might be boring to you because you've read them 1,000 times. You might think because they're a year old or maybe even 2 years old that they're not relevant anymore. Don't assume that everyone on your email list is the same. They probably won't have read every single case study on your website. It's a real opportunity to engage them emotionally and to make them more likely to take action to support you later on. You can use email to launch a campaign. That's a really good use of email marketing. Here's one from MenCap launching a campaign called The Secret Life of Us. They had a really great campaign about they don't know that a disabled person or the challenges they face with everyday asks. Now, your email subscribers are probably going to be your most engaged supporters. So if you're launching a campaign, they're absolutely the best people to hear about it first, because they're the ones who know your charity. They're the ones who've been involved in previous campaigns or donated before or come to your events. They're the people who are going to share your campaign or get involved in it first. So it's a really great way of seeding that content and making sure that your campaign kind of starts with a bang. You can use it to share news about a campaign win. Here's one from Greenpeace. Again, you're probably starting to notice a bit of a pattern when it comes to these emails. We've got nice short paragraphs. We've got key information highlighted in bold. We've got some, really on-brand link colors here. You can see the links are green on this. And you've got really great reasons to take the action that the email sender is asking you to take. So we've got a nice quote here. We've got a strong image, which is below the screen grab here. But it's just a really nice, simple email. It just gets to the point really quickly. And if there's probably not too many of you that are listening to this thinking, I just don't get enough email. I wish I could just get more emails in my inbox. It's just too bare looking, So it's really important that you can get to the point quickly, because everybody that you're sending emails to, they feel the same way. They get tons of emails. They're just looking for people to get to the point and to provide them with a real reason to take action. So this is another great example of doing that. So actually taking action, again, this is one from MenCap, their Hear My Voice campaign. So this bit of background to the campaign, a nice, really strong sort of hero image at the top. So you can see campaigning is a really great call to action for email, because those are your committed supporters, and those are the people that are most likely to sign your petition. So just asking them to take action on a campaign before, during the campaign, and even towards the latter stages is a great way of doing it. And then, again, from the same campaign, just thanking people towards the end of the campaign or even after. You're not actually asking for them to take another action in this email. You're not trying to get anything else from them. You're just saying thanks. Thank you for your support this year. Thank you for your support with this campaign. And again, just being thanked is probably something that some donors and campaigners, don't get enough of or don't hear enough of. So just sending a nice thank you message saying, we really appreciate your support. That's going to make them feel nice and warm and fuzzy inside. And that's going to emotionally engage them even further. And that's going to set you up even better for calls to action further down the line. So how do you get your emails actually read? Well, here's kind of the life cycle of the average email. It gets seen, hopefully, so it lands when it lands in someone's inbox. It gets opened. Hopefully someone's moved enough to actually open the email to see what's inside it. It gets read, and then someone acts on it. And then ideally you're going to be going back to the start there when you send a new email. So there's the kind of 4 stages of see, open, read, and act. People can fall off at every stage, so you need to make sure you're putting content in front of them that makes them want to continue to the next stage. So what are the building blocks of an email that's going to get the whole way around that cycle? Well, there are these: strong subject line, relevant pre-header text, short, concise copy, a clear call to action, only one if you can manage it. Make your email stand out somehow, make it mobile friendly, and try to make it personalized. And I'll run through each of those now. So strong subject line. Now, this is important because it's one of the things that people see on what's known as the envelope contents. If you think when you get an envelope through the post, you might have a look at the postmark, you might try and see who it's from, and those are the things that are going to make you decide whether you're going to open it or not. Well, an email is just the same. Who it's from is really important because it shows trust level is there if you know the organization's name or the person's name, and a subject line is going to tell you what's inside the email to make you decide whether you want to open it or not. So here's an inbox with a few different emails from a few different charities. You've got one from CreateSpace, who've just put their CreateSpace June newsletter as their subject line. And then you've got another one from Greenpeace, which says breaking shell delayed by Kai activists. So probably that urgent subject line is going to get more people to open it than that less urgent sounding one, which is just the topic of the newsletter, which, you know, incidentally, if you're sending a newsletter, do say that it is a newsletter, but it's great to try and describe what's inside the email instead. So instead of saying, you know, June newsletter, you might say fundraise for sign our campaign and more stories or something like that. So people can see why it's a really great idea to open it. Having that sense of urgency as Greenpeace do is really awesome if it's appropriate for your charity, but not everyone is going to have that. What makes a good subject line? Ideally, it's going to be interesting, it's going to be personal, it's going to contain actual facts. Asking questions is an effective technique where relevant because it does provide a certain sense of intrigue and stressing that urgency as well. What doesn't usually work on subject lines is being really kind of mysterious and trying to use that kind of clickbaity approach to get people to open the email. While people might open the email out of curiosity to see what's inside, when they're disappointed that the content didn't quite match up to the expectations that were set in the kind of intriguing headline, then they may be much less likely to read the email and take action as a result of it. So it's always best to try to tell, not sell, when it comes to writing your subject lines. So the pre-header text is really often ignored in emails. So that's just simply the first line of copy in your email. That's often going to display with or right next to the subject line in someone's inbox. And this is another part of the envelope contents, if you like. This is another thing that the readers are going to read when they're deciding whether or not to open the email. So try to use it to amplify or add to your subject line. So the really sort of common default setup is that in email programs, it says, you know, view this in your browser or having trouble reading this email or something. That tends to get put right at the top. So that's the kind of text that you see in the inbox. Try to move that text to the bottom of the email and try to add something that's actually going to elaborate on the subject line and give people more of a reason to open your email, because it is another section that they see in the inbox and it is a chance to engage that person more. And you know, it's if you just put some kind of housekeeping information like how you can view the email if it's not looking right, then you're kind of losing the opportunity to engage people and to get them to open the email. The copy should be short and concise if you can possibly manage it. Now, again, that's because, you know, there's not that many people who don't get enough emails, so people ideally just want the emails to get to the point as much as possible. So this one from ActionAid is just a few sentences long. So it's a really, really quick email, gets to the point very, very quickly. And you probably can do this more than you think because the people on your email list are subscribers who trust you. You know, they may well already not need any more information from you to want to do the calls to action you're asking them to do. So this is a chance just to get to the point really quickly and to tell them what you want them to do without delay. Now, if you can do it, and if your cause kind of lends itself to it, then strong copy makes a really big difference. You know, in a crowded inbox, it's going to be the stuff that sounds really emotive, that sounds really powerful. That's the stuff that's going to get read. That's the stuff that's going to get acted on. This is an email from an organization called All Out, and you can see that the first line there is a really, really powerful emotive line. You know, it really makes you want to read on. It's, you know, really quite shocking actually, and so it's a really powerful email, full stop. So you can see the subject line at the top there is kicked out and homeless because I'm gay. So just the subject line like that is going to be, you know, while it does describe what's in the email, really makes someone want to open it and to see what's inside and to absorb the content. So if your cause lends itself to that kind of strong copy, then that's really good to try to include it. And this is an old email from what was breast cancer campaign. So if you can stand out with visuals in your email, then that's really awesome. So as well as it being a really strong bit of copy around saving the lives of 18 women in your constituency every year, you've got that really strong pink branding and the really interesting kind of sort of illustrated women along there. So anything that makes your email stand out somehow is going to be something that increases the click-through rates as well as get it opened in the first place. It's a really great email copy, so it's scannable. You know, to be honest, it's hard to accept, but most people aren't going to read every single word of your carefully crafted email copy. They're going to skim through it really quickly. So try to get the important information right at the front, right at the start of the email. Make sure you've got a really clear call to action in there. Try to cut out all the unnecessary words. You might start off with really long copy, and it takes a little bit of time to chop it down to just the essentials. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, "I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long letter instead." And I always come back to this because it's so true that it takes longer to write shorter copy, because it's harder to kind of chop out the unnecessary information than it is to just stick it all down on the page and not edit it. Use headlines to break up the text as much as possible. So try not to have big, long, blocky paragraphs. Try to have headlines that summarize what's in those paragraphs so that people skim reading can just have a look at the headlines and decide whether they want to read the whole thing. And use active and actionable language. You know, you want to try and include as many verbs in there as possible. So you're doing words like take action or fundraise or sign or read or watch or whatever it is. You know, try to use that throughout your copy to get the impression across that, you know, you want people to do things when they see this. You want people to actually go out and take action. So try to include as many words that get that across as you can. So include call to action buttons as well as embedding links within text. Then try to make the buttons as really big and obvious as possible. Most email service providers will have these as part of their template, so make as much use of them as you can, as well as being a really interesting, awkward, kind of almost funny image that Scope have included here. The call to action text is really interesting. It says watch and cringe. You know, it's not just watch our video, but like, you know, you're going to cringe if you watch this, which is really intriguing in itself. It's also a really strong color, so the yellow really stands out against the sort of main brand purple and against the image above it. It's also the full width of the email, so you really cannot miss this call to action button. That makes it really thumb friendly, so if you're opening on a mobile device, then there's no way your thumb's going to miss that call to action button. So it's really strong and makes it really obvious what you want the email subscriber to do. So speaking of mobile, mobile is really important when it comes to email marketing. Up to 75% of emails are opened on a smartphone device. And by 2018, it's going to be more like 80% of users expected to access their email accounts via mobile. So what that means is that your emails have to be readable on mobiles, and that's without doing that pinching and zooming. I'm sure everyone's had an email come through on their smartphone that's not optimized for a mobile device and had to do that really annoying pinching and zooming and then sort of swiping left and right to kind of read all of the sentences. It's really annoying, and people are way less likely to bother to do it when they see that they're going to have a hard time doing it on their mobile device. That means your emails need to be what's known as responsive. So they should be sent using a template that's going to look good across all devices, desktop and tablets and mobiles alike. So that's simply a case of going into your email service provider like MailChimp or .mailer or whatever, and just searching for the responsive templates. They'll all have them, so make sure you're using those templates. And it's not just about the templates that you use, it's about sort of adhering to some of the things we mentioned already around short copy, around getting to the point nice and quickly, because if there's very little space on the mobile device, then people don't want to be scrolling down and down and down. And especially when they're reading emails on a mobile, there's a good chance they're on the move. So they want to see things as quickly as possible, read them as quickly as possible before they bump into someone on the train or something like that. So yeah, short copy. You also want images that are going to load quickly. So try not to upload really big images that just take a very long time to download, because that's going to make the email look weird and it's going to sort of make the user experience a bit more annoying. You want nice clear call to action, really engaging straight away. And remember just generally that mobile users are a bit less likely to engage with emails. So what I mean by that is if you're asking people to sign a petition or to make a donation, people are often on the move whenever they're reading them. So they're kind of less likely to do that. That's what's known as conversion rates being lower on mobile. Filling in forms is just a bit more fiddly on a mobile device. Taking most kind of actions is generally a bit harder to do. So have a look at your own stats and see what percentage of people are opening your emails on a mobile device, and then you can start to tailor your content for them accordingly. Personalization is a really effective tactic. That's simply using the personal information that you've got about your email subscriber in the copy of the email, which most email service providers will help you do automatically. That typically, the most typical example is using the person's first name in the body of the email or in the subject line. So here's an example where the start of the email includes the person's first name. There's just something about being addressed by your first name in conversation or in meetings and in emails alike that just gets your attention. So we find that emails that include someone's first name are more likely to get opened, they're more likely to be acted upon. So you'll see this example is from a campaign that we did a couple of years ago, where we asked, who can an abused child turn to for help in one version of the test, and then we used someone's first name, asking if will we show them a vulnerable child that someone cares. And we found when we included the subscriber's first name in the subject line, then that version of the email got a much higher open rate. So using people's actual names is going to be something that's really effective in increasing engagement. Segmentation, so that's simply taking your entire list, which is going to be full of people from different sources who are interested in different things, and splitting them out into separate segments of people. So for example, you might have one single email list of like 10,000 people or something, and segmentation simply involves splitting them up into fundraisers, into single donors, campaigners, whatever kind of segments make most sense for your organization. This really helps you to target and personalize your emails. So if you get an email that's targeted to the type of involvement you have with the charity, you're much more likely to act on it. And it avoids the kind of spray and pray risk that we talked about earlier on of just sending the same message to absolutely everybody. You can use data that you've already collected, so you know that it's informed data, so the fundraisers example or the campaigners example. You can use data from behavioral data from your actual emails, so that might be when someone's clicked on a campaign, a previous campaign, you can then create a segment from that campaign of people who've clicked on it. So for example, you send email A, you've got a link in there is to your website. You can create a segment of people who actually clicked on that link, because that shows they've got a higher level of engagement, and you can then target them with further communications. And they're going to be way more likely to respond because it's much more specific. And you can also use transactional data. So that's data from actions or conversions that have happened elsewhere. So people who've donated, people who signed up to particular events, things like that. So the more segmented your communications are, the more likely they are to lead to actions. You can also send out reactivation campaigns. So this is one sent out by Parkinson's UK. This means that if someone hasn't opened your emails for a little while, or someone hasn't taken actions on your emails for a little while, that kind of suggests they've sort of gone cold. So you can send out campaigns to try to get those people back on board. So it's giving them a chance to sort of opt in to continue to receiving your updates, and also a chance to unsubscribe, which is, absolutely fine when people do unsubscribe. I'd say they're not interested in getting your content anymore. You don't want to send them stuff that they don't want, and you don't want to hurt your open rates by sending people stuff who are not really interested in getting it. It's a really good idea every sort of 6 months, 12 months to send out a reactivation campaign just to check that people are still involved. And you can also use dynamic, or what's known as conditional content, to really further personalize your email. So this is one from EasyJet that's using all sorts of personalized information that EasyJet holds about that subscriber. So it tells them where they've been to, it tells them the distance they've covered in that time. You know, you've really personalized the content in an email like this. And if you're able to gather the data and, you know, deploy it through your email service provider, then you're going to get really high engagement with that, because it's really very specifically about that person. And there's a level of personalization that's even higher than just using that person's first name. You can also do automated email journeys. That's simply a series of emails that's automatically triggered by an event, like signing up for a newsletter or donating. So for example, that might be a welcome journey for a new subscriber or a new donor. Someone signs up to your email list. You can set an automation journey of, say, 3 or 5 emails that tells them about your organization, about the cause, about its kind of most important victories, or the kind of key resources that a subscriber can access. You can use it for stewardship. So if someone signs up to, say, your London Marathon group, then you can send them a series of emails on how to train, how to fundraise, and sort of key dates that they might need to know. You can also do a campaign journey. So if someone signs a petition, you could then nurture that person to making a donation or taking a further action. So you can say, thank you for signing the campaign in the first email. You can tell them about past campaigns in the next email, tell them about another campaign they might be interested in the next email. You can set all these emails up in advance so that they're sent out automatically. And this is one of the reasons that email is such a high return channel. You know, you can set all that stuff up in advance, and then anyone who signs up for that particular journey is going to get it automatically. You don't have to send out those emails again after that. So it's a really sort of high return activity you can be doing. So once again, the elements of a really great email: strong subject line, really relevant pre-header text, you know, use that sort of first line to sort of expand on the email subject line, short, concise copy that gets to the point really quickly, clear call to action, just one if you can limit it to that. Try to make your email stand out with, you know, really strong copy and really interesting visuals. Make it mobile friendly by using responsive templates and following the tips above, and try to make it personalized if you can to the data that you hold about that person. So some really great further reading, some sort of extra resources if you want to find out more about email marketing. There's an email called Email Weekly that you can sign up to at emailweekly.co. That gives you some really great email tips, a roundup of some of the best email marketing articles from around the web, and examples of really awesome emails. There's the Charity Email Gallery, which is a gallery of some of the best charity emails out there. There's a huge number of emails in there that you can check out, with even more examples that we've fitted in today. The MailChimp blog, so that's one of the email service providers, a really popular one. They do some really cool stuff, not just about MailChimp, but about email marketing in general. And the Phrasee blog. So Phrasee is a company that uses AI to generate great subject lines. So they have a really awesome blog and an email that they send out to round up as well. So really great resources you can use to find out more about email marketing. Yeah, you can use all that to really sort of further your knowledge even more. So I'm now going to see if there's any questions I can answer as well. Okay, so don't you have to offer an unsubscribe on each email by law? So yes, that's true, that the vast majority of, in fact, I think every email service provider won't even let you send out an email unless you offer an option to unsubscribe to your email list in that email. That's just one of the many ways that they prevent spam sending. So that's just, you know, scraping email addresses from various places on the internet and then just blasting out emails without any opportunity for the user to say, look, I don't want to get these emails anymore. So yeah, that's true. You do need to make sure that you have an unsubscribe link in every email. How do you make sure that automated or mass emails don't end up in people's junk boxes? So this is a really tricky one, because every email service provider has lots of different complex rules that send emails to your junk box, your spam box. So whatever you're sending needs to avoid words that sound quite spammy. Some of them, most charities are going to avoid simply by nature of their work, but including things like the word free in your subject line makes it more likely to end up in spam. If you just Google, you know, words to avoid ending up in spam, in spam folders, then that's going to give you a bit more information on that. The main way is having a really clean list and making sure that the people on your list actually wanted to get your emails in the first place. Very difficult to sort of account for every eventuality on that one, unfortunately. Okay, so does number one, using GIFs in email, and two, using different from names work if they fit the content, the organization's content stroke style, or are they always gimmicks not worth the extra few minutes of work? Really good question. Using GIFs in email does make it probably more likely that someone's going to see it, but using a GIF generally adds a level of humor, so it really depends on your cause. I'm all for using humor where you can in charity communications, because I think we could just that's the sort of thing that people engage with and people are more likely to find interesting. So I say, why not? But it just totally depends if it fits in your content or style. So different from names is a bit trickier, because you should always try to include your organization's name in the from name, because that's the brand that the subscriber has bought into. People do leave organizations, so if you use if you use a different from name, from Matt Collins, from Steve Jobs, from anyone really, then if that keeps changing, then that can really confuse subscribers, particularly where, as is usually the case, subscribers have never met those people. So I always think it's important to make sure the brand name is in there if you can, and definitely use GIFs if it's relevant, because it's going to make it more engaging and more interesting. So as a small charity with limited resources, what one thing would you recommend we prioritize when it comes to email marketing? That's a really good question. I would say the one thing to prioritize is to consider what maybe your 2 to 3 main calls to action are as an organization. So forget about email for a second. Just sit down with a piece of paper and go, what are the 3 things we want people to do as an organization? And then write really write short emails that ask people to do those things. So if you are just trying to send out lots of email newsletters with lots and lots of different stories, and putting all the effort into doing that once a month, then try to boil that down into what are people really going to find interesting, how can we help people a bit more. So write down maybe your 2 to 3 main calls to action, and write short emails to ask people to do those different calls to action in different ways. And probably look at your website and look at all the awesome resources you have for people who are engaged with your charity, and then just write emails to tell people about them. You can't assume that everyone on your email list knows about all that stuff and knows how awesome all of that content is. So write a few emails that summarizes what you've got on there, how it can help them, and just keep it short. Don't think you've got to write really long emails or really flashy emails. Just keep it as basic as you possibly can. So is there any evidence on whether including video content is more likely to lead to action? So the thing about that is that if you include video content in your email, first of all, it's almost always going to be a link to a video elsewhere. So really that just makes the call to action watching the video. So if you say you've got a campaign call to action where what you really want people to do is sign a petition, if you include a video in that email, people will tend to just go and watch the video as the call to action. So if that's part of the campaign and that's really what you want people to do, then of course, use that video content, and it's going to be, a nice sort of simple call to action, sort of low effort. So lots of people are going to do it, but be aware that it's probably going to turn into your main call to action in the email. And so that's, if you're okay with that, then brilliant. And if you're not okay with that, then that's the thing to be aware of, really. Benchmarks for email marketing. How do we tell if we're doing well compared to other charities? So again, if the stats I mentioned earlier, so just Google them for MailChimp. So benchmark open rates MailChimp. They've got really great breakdowns of the sort of average open rates and the average click rates by industry. Now these are really broad figures. I mentioned sort of 24% open rates and 3% click rate earlier on for the charity sector. And those are really broad. They're based on thousands and thousands of different charities, including US ones, and I think American interaction with digital channels in the nonprofit sector, and just the nonprofit sector in general. There's quite a sort of sort of interesting subtle differences in how European versus American users interact. So it's not always comparing like with like, but those would be general open rates to sort of benchmark yourself against. And again, the thing is, the race is always sort of with yourself, if you like. So if you've got an open rate of less than 20%, that's where you're starting, you know, and the way to increase that is to, you know, offer people the chance to unsubscribe, do those reactivation campaigns, and to try to just send out the best content you can that's going to make people want to actually engage with it, really. So thanks so much, everyone. That's all we've got time for today. As I said, check out the MailChimp blog if you want to find out a bit more. Check out our website at platypusdigital.com. We've got a blog where we blog about email marketing and more digital stuff besides. And yeah, keep sending great emails. Try to send really sharp content. Make it nice and short. And remember that almost everyone that you are sending email to is going to be reading it on a mobile device. So try to make it nice and short as a result. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.